Hello everybody and welcome back to 89 Games in our continuing series on the Gloomhaven character guides. Today we're going to be talking about the Moon or Eclipse class, so if you want to avoid any spoilers, go ahead and click away now. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and jump right in 3, 2, 1, here we go. Alright everybody, today we're talking Night Shroud. So Night Shroud is a very unique and very fun class to play. Although your friends may not like you very much because you're going to be invisible most of the time, if not all the time, and all the attention and aggro is going to be on the rest of your party. So you need to make sure that you're moving quickly, getting rid of enemies, and using that invisibility to its fullest effect, or else your party is just going to get taken out while you hide in a corner. So let's go ahead and talk about the Night Shroud right now, and we'll move into his cards. And we'll talk about, he uses darkness and invisibility. So I'm going to go with a build kind of just maximizing on both of those things. And the cards you pick and decide to pick may be different, but I'll try to do my best to kind of explain my reasoning as we go through. So let's start here with this first card at level 1, Black Knives. So Black Knives allows you to attack 4 different times while invisible with an attack 2, range 3 as the final part of an action. So you actually attack, and then after the attack, if you're invisible, you get to attack 2 at range 3. And of course, this is 4 times, and then the card is burned and goes away forever. So this is kind of a nice card early on, I would say. It's not as useful later levels because attack 2 isn't that much, especially when enemies have a lot more health at later levels. But if you get Night Shroud early on in the game, and you're only like level 2 or 3 maybe, it might make sense to hang on to this card because that attack 2 at range 3 will be a nice little extra damage on enemies when they only have, 8 health maybe, as opposed to maybe 10 or 12 later on. And then the bottom is also a good one for the attack 2 and muddle on a bottom. And he does have some moves on his top, so another good reason to use this card. And then moving on to Cloak of Shade, this is our first invisibility card. So it's an attack 1, creates darkness, and then the bottom is a move 3 with you consume darkness to become invisible, you get 1 XP. It also has a nice low initiative at 13, and the Night Shroud does have some low initiatives, which is really nice, so you can go early, get that invisibility on you, and then go do some damage and be safe, all the way until the next turn where you use a high initiative card so you can stay invisible for 2 full turns off 1 invisibility. So this is a good card early on. The attack 1, yeah, that's really low, but the point of this one really is to maybe do a little bit of damage, but to get that darkness activated so that you can consume it somewhere else. Although I would usually use this card for the bottom, for the move 3 invisible, so I'd want to get my darkness from somewhere else. And then the next one is Empowering Void. It's an attack 2. You can consume dark to double the value of your next move ability, or rather of all your move abilities this turn, with 1 XP. And then the bottom is a move 2, consume darkness to double the value of all your attack abilities this turn, gain 1 XP. So this is a really powerful card if you use it in combination with that darkness to, get a lot of move or a lot of attack out of your cards, because mobility is a problem for the Night Shroud. It can be, depending on the cards that you pick, and the cards that we're going to pick, we are going to be limited to mostly move 2s and move 3s. So being able to double our move after a small attack like on top of this card is really nice, but I really do like the bottom of this one because there's a way for us to do like 10, 12 attack if we double our attacks with the bottom of this one. So this is a really powerful card for buffing up other cards. I usually hang on to that one for a while. And then next is Doomed Breeze. This is an attack 1, range 3 and muddle, creates darkness, gains 1 XP, and then the bottom, a move 3, curse 1 adjacent enemy. This is another good one to hang on to earlier on, especially just because it can create darkness. Again, the attack isn't that great. You will muddle an enemy, which is nice, but mostly you're going to want it to be able to create that darkness. And then the bottom with a curse is actually really good because if you have nothing else you can do, it is nice to be able to just move up, curse enemy, throw that miss into their modifier deck. Really helps out your team since you are probably invisible. And then moving on to the next one here is Enervating Wound. So this is an attack 4, wound. You heal yourself for 4, creates darkness. It's 2 XP, but it's a burn card. And then the bottom is a move 4. Now, this is actually the first card that I'm going to trade out. And it's because for a burn, it's really not that good because, now if we needed to heal, it might be better. But as a Night Shroud, you should be invisible most of the time. You're not going to be getting hit. You're not going to need to heal. you're really not going to need that heal for, and if you do, you can always just carry a potion or something to get basically the same thing. So I don't see a whole lot of value in the top of this card. And then the bottom, though, the move 4 is nice early on because like I said, we are limited on movement, but there's ways to get around that too. And then moving on to the next one is Spirit of the Night. Now this one I really like because the top is attack 3, but if you have darkness to consume, you can kill one normal target instead, and then gain 1 XP. So I really like this one because this is like your assassination card where you can just go find a normal enemy, consume darkness, and they're dead. And then you could use a stamina potion, get this card back, and if you happen to recreate darkness on this same turn that you killed this enemy, by the next turn, you can kill another one since you got this back with the stamina card. So this is a really powerful way to thin those smaller enemies out of the way for your team. So I really like the top of this card. The bottom is a move 6. It creates darkness and gains 1 XP, but it's a burn. So in those moments where maybe you've already been able to use the top of this card once or twice, or getting towards the end of the scenario and you're falling behind, then it's a good time you could burn this card just to get that move 6 and catch up. And then the next one is Dancing Shadows. With the top is a move 3 and attack 1, so it's a nice, decent move on the top, which, like I said, this is where you would want to combine with like the bottom of Black Knives, so you can get 2 attacks off. And then the bottom is all attacks targeting you gain disadvantage. So if you're not invisible, you can do this instead and at least mitigate some of the damage that you would normally take, since all the enemies will have disadvantage on you. Plus, it creates darkness for us to use with our other cards. And then the next card is Silent Force. This one I like as well for this top especially. Attack 3, you add +2 attack and gain 1 XP if you're invisible. So this is another one I really like. Combine that invisibility and cards like this that use that invisibility to do more attack, gain you XP. Really powerful. The bottom is another move 6, loot 1. So it's a burn. Mostly this would be used maybe to catch up if you fell behind towards later on in a scenario. But otherwise, I would just keep this one for the top. And then the next one is Smoke Step. Move 1, attack 2. If you have darkness, it becomes +2 move and +2 attack. So it actually ends up becoming 3 move and 4 attack. So again, if we're creating that darkness and we're keeping it out there as much as we can, a card like this is so much better than just a move 1, attack 2. When you can power it up and get move 3, attack 4 out of it, that is phenomenal, especially at level 1. And then the bottom is a move 1, and then it creates darkness for us. So you do see that we have a lot of these cards where one side of it creates darkness and one side consumes it. So we do need to kind of strategically play our cards and figure out how we want to play each turn to make sure that we're keeping darkness out there as much as possible, and that we're also staying invisible as much as possible. So then we'll move on into the X cards, and the first one is Wings of the Night. The top is an attack 1, go invisible on yourself. So I like this one because of that invisibility, not so much the attack. You know, the attack, it's 1. You might be able to finish something off with it, do a little bit of chip damage, but mostly I like this for the invisibility. Plus it's a top that helps you go invisible, so you might be able to go invisible and still move up for your next turn. And then the bottom allows you, during the next 4 attack actions, you get to perform move 2 as the first part of the action. So you can move 2 before you attack when you use a top attack card. Or a bottom attack card. It doesn't really matter where it is. If you're using an attack action, you get to move 2 first. So that could be really powerful and useful, but it is a burn, and you know, after 4 times you using it, it burns. So again, I really like this one more for the top. I do shy away from burns on the Night Shroud for the most part because he is another 9-card hand character like the Scoundrel. So burning is something you may only want to do 1 or 2 of over a whole scenario, because you're limited on your hand size. So you do want to be a little more careful with burns the Night Shroud. Not saying not to use them, just you're going to have to be more careful and cautious than other characters who have more cards. And then the next one is Concealed Dominance. This is an attack 4. If you consume dark, it gives you that huge pattern out in front of you and 2 XP. Now this is a burn, so again, it'd be very situational if this would like make sense. If you're hitting at least 3 enemies with this, maybe you're powering it up with something else so it's a little more than attack 4, it would probably be worth it, but most of the time you're probably not going to be wanting to use this one. And then the bottom is a move 4. If you consume darkness, you can move to any unoccupied hex, you just can't move through closed doors. So it's more or less allowing you to teleport wherever you want on the map. Again, that's really handy, but it is a burn. Both sides of this card are a burn, making it kind of hard to hang on to unless you have something specific in mind. And then finally, Dark Cloud. The top is an attack 3 with Curse. And the bottom is a Muddle, target all adjacent enemies, but it creates darkness. So that's not a bad little card. Attack 3 with a Curse on there is nice. Get that extra damage mitigation into the enemy's deck. And then, of course, the bottom creates darkness for us. However, out of all these cards, the only switch that I would make is I would take out Enervating Wound, like we talked about earlier. I'm going to put Wings of the Night because it allows me to go invisible. So at this point, we should have 2 cards that can allow us to go invisible at level 1 so far, and that's going to increase. But, you know, that's potentially 4 turns of being invisible if you play your initiatives correct. And by then, it'll almost be time for you to rest, and then you'll get those cards back. So already at level 1, you can pretty much be invisible the entire time if you play the cards right. So let's go ahead and move on to level 2 now and talk about all the leveled cards. So at level 2, we're going to find Prepare for the Kill or Soulfire. Now, the Night Shroud has a lot of cards that are good on both the choices that you get at each level, and it can be hard to make the decision. So I just based it on things that create darkness, things that make me go invisible. That's what I want to focus on. So Prepare for the Kill here, attack 2 on top, move 2 on the bottom, but both sides of it create darkness. That gives us a lot of flexibility to get darkness out there when we need it. The other one, Soulfire, though, is a good card because it's attack 1, range 3, and wound. So not a lot of attack power, but you get to add stun and gain XP if you're invisible. So if you're invisible, which you should be most of the time, you know, this would be a wound and stun that's really, really powerful, plus it's reusable. And then the bottom is an attack 6 curse, which is, you know, really powerful in itself. However, I'm going to go with Prepare for the Kill here just because of the flexibility of getting that darkness to buff up the other cards that we already have and the ones that we're going to get. So we'll take Prepare for the Kill, and then we'll take Dancing Shadows out to put that one in. And then we'll move on to level 3, where we'll find Terrorblade and Armor of the Night. Now, again, we have a couple of decent cards here. So Terrorblade, attack 3, push 3, and the bottom is a move 4, and then all attacks targeting you gain disadvantage for the round. So that move 4 is really nice for movement. That is the main reason I would take this card if I were to take it. However, Armor of the Night has attack 4 on the top. If we consume darkness, we heal 4 on ourselves and gain XP. And then the bottom is a shield oneself, and it activates darkness. So we should be invisible most of the time, yes. So the shield may not be that useful. But maybe for that one turn where we have to be visible, we would play this card to get that darkness out there for our next turn, and then also give us that extra defense. But the top of this one, if we do take damage, this is a good way to heal, and we can still get some good damage out there while healing ourselves. So I like Armor of the Night because it creates darkness, it consumes darkness, as opposed to this one, Terrorblade doesn't make darkness or use it in any way. So we're going to go ahead Armor of the Night here, and then we'll take out Black Knives to put that one in. Now, the reason I'm taking out Black Knives, like we said, this top can be decent, but by now we're at level 3, and depending on how late we got Night Shroud, our party could be at level 4 or 5, so we could be facing higher level enemies, making Black Knives top less useful. So that's why we're going to trade this in and get Armor of the Night in here, and then we'll move on to level 4. So we'll find Nightfall or Grim Sustenance at level 4. Nightfall allows us at the end of our next returns, if darkness isn't strong, to infuse darkness, make it strong. Now, this is really good for keeping the darkness out there. However, we have enough cards, the way we're picking cards with the build, to not really have to worry about this. We should be able to get darkness when we want it. I'm not going to take this one because it is a burn, and it's going to be easy for us to create darkness even without this. And then the bottom, though, is a move 3, attack 2, and if there's light, we consume it to add +1 attack, create darkness, and gain 1 XP. So the bottom's a really nice move with an attack on it, though. So again, it's not a bad card. There is a reason to take it. However, Grim Sustenance is an attack 2, and you add +2 attack and gain 1 XP if you're invisible, and then you go invisible again. And then the bottom is a loot 1 that activates darkness. So the loot 1, not that great, but creating darkness is. The top of this one, though, allowing us to do 4 damage, 4 attack if we're invisible, and then immediately go invisible again. So we'll stay invisible after our turn's over and all the way into our next turn. I really like this for being able to chain our invisibility and stay invisible. So I'm going to take Grim Sustenance here at level 4. And then we're going to trade out Doomed Breeze to put that one in. So now at level 5, we've got Claws of the Night and Black Arrow. So Claws of the Night, again, another nice card. It's not the one I'm going to take, but it's still another nice card. So it's attack 2, poison. If you consume any element, it's attack 3 with poison, and then you get to create darkness and gain 1 XP, and then you also do it in that 2 pattern where you can hit 2 enemies that are adjacent to you and to each other. So a really decent attack with poison on it is really nice. And then the bottom, during your next 4 move actions while invisible, you get to perform attack 2, targeting all adjacent enemies as a final part of the action. So at the end of all your moves, you just attack everything near you, everything adjacent to you, with attack 2. So again, that's really powerful. It uses that invisibility. But then we move on to Black Arrow here, and this one is an attack 4, range 4, muddle and curse, gain 1 XP. The bottom, invisible on yourself. And then if you have darkness to consume, you actually get to attack 3 at range 3 after you go invisible and gain 1 XP. So of these 2 cards, we're going to take Black Arrow because it allows us to go invisible again. This is giving us a lot of cards with invisibility, making sure that we can always stay invisible and get the bonuses from being invisible on a lot of our attacks. Plus, if we are able to have darkness activated, we'll get an extra attack while going invisible on this one, so I really like that one. So taking Black Arrow, we're going to trade out Wings of the Night to put that one in. Now, we'll lose an invisibility card to put this one in, but we're trading out invisibility cards essentially. And, you know, as long as you have at least 3 invisibility cards, you should be able to stay invisible the entire time. But you could always have a few extras in there and swap out something else if you find yourself not being invisible as often as you would like. So we'll move on to level 6. And at level 6, we'll find Unseen Dread or Swallowed by Fear. So Unseen Dread is a nice little simple card with attack 3, create darkness. The bottom is a move 6 with jump. You know, if mobility is a serious problem for us, this is a really good card for that move 6 with jump on the bottom. It's not a burn. That really will help us get around the map a lot faster, a lot easier. However, Swallowed by Fear, the top is an attack 2, but if we consume darkness and any other element, we can kill 1 normal or elite enemy instead and gain 1 XP. And then the bottom is a move 3, push 2, target all adjacent enemies. The top of this one is really, really, really good because we can kill elite enemies with it now. The only caveat is that we have to have darkness and some other element. The darkness won't be a problem because we can get that, but this will really depend if we're playing with a party where a lot of elements are getting created and there's always going to be that second element out there, then this card is almost a no-brainer. You definitely want to take it because you'll be able to kill the enemies with it without having to fight them. However, if we don't have that situation and it's really hard to get a second element, then this card makes no sense. You'd want to go with the Unseen Dread or even go back to like maybe Claws of the Night or something else. So we're going to assume, though, if we're playing in like a party of 4, we're probably going to have other elements out there. So we'll take Swallowed by Fear. And then we're going to trade out Spirit of the Night to put that one in, because Spirit of the Night was the one that allowed us to kill 1 normal enemy with darkness. So this is basically just a straight upgrade to that. It just requires us to have that extra element. So, and then we'll move on to level 7, where we will find Eyes of the Night and Quiet Frenzy. So again, another one where there's 2 really good cards. The top of Eyes of the Night, gain advantage on all of your attacks, and then you can also target invisible enemies, gain 2 XP, and of course this is an active card, stays active for the entire scenario. So getting advantage on all of your attacks, super powerful, really, really, really nice. Plus, those invisible enemies won't be a problem because you'll be able to target them even if they're invisible. However, you know, it is a burn, but an active card. This would be one that you'd want to play early on, and it'd probably be the only burn you would use to get that advantage out of it. And then the bottom is a move 5 with, if you consume light, you can muddle, target all adjacent enemies, and create darkness, gain 1 XP. So it's a good card. However, Quiet Frenzy is also a good card. Quiet Frenzy is an attack 3. You add +2 and gain 1 XP if you're invisible. However, if you consume darkness, it becomes +3 more attack for a total of 8. So this is an attack 8 if you're invisible and have darkness. And then, of course, you could combine this with the bottom of Empowering Void and double that to attack 16. So the top there is really, really powerful. And then the bottom is a nice attack 3, move 3 for an attack on the bottom. Of the 2 cards here, I mean, the advantage is good. However, I like this attack here on the bottom, Quiet Frenzy, and then plus the extra movement and attack on the bottom of this card as well. So we're going to go with the Quiet Frenzy here. And then we're going to trade that out, take Silent Force out to put that one in. and then we'll go ahead and move on. So, you know, you might want to go back and get the other card for that advantage later on. However, we're going to go ahead and move on to level 8, and we'll find Gloom Darts and Lurking Ruin. So, Gloom Darts, attack 3, range 4, poison and curse. If you have darkness to consume, you get to target 3 enemies with this and gain 1 XP. And then the bottom's a move 3 that creates darkness. So, again, we have a really good card here. Lurking Ruin is attack 5, add poison, muddle, wound, and gain 1 XP if you're invisible. And then the bottom is a move 3, go invisible on yourself. So again, both of these are really good. The top one here, or rather Gloom Darts here, really focuses on the consuming and creating darkness. Lurking Ruin focuses on invisibility and using invisibility to do more damage. So this just really comes down to how you're playing the character. If you're more about using the darkness to upgrade your attacks and abilities, then Gloom Darts makes sense. But if you're using the invisibility as your main focus, then you'd want Lurking Ruin. I'm going Lurking Ruin because I'm really going to focus on invisibility with the Night Shroud. So having Lurking Ruin now, we're going to trade out Smoke Step to put that in. And then we'll move on to level 9, where we'll find Angel of Death and Voice of the Night. So Angel of Death, attack 4, target all adjacent enemies. However, if you consume darkness, you kill all normal enemies instead and gain 2 XP. And the card itself gives 2 XP without the darkness, so it's actually 4 XP. Of course, at level 9, that really doesn't matter anymore. And then it is a burn card, however. So this one, though, just think about a group of enemies. There's 3 normal enemies where you can jump in the middle of them all and just kill all of them with this card. Totally worth burning the card. I mean, that clears, essentially can clear one whole room. There might be 1 or 2 enemies left in it. That's really, really powerful. And then the bottom, a move 5 jump, which we need movement with the Night Shroud, so that's nice. Plus, if you consume darkness with that side of the card, you can kill 1 adjacent normal enemy. So I can move and just kill an enemy by consuming the darkness. So I really, really like this one. The other one is Voice of the Night. On the top, it's your next 5 attacks while invisible, add stun to the attack. So 5 stuns out of your attacks, also really, really powerful. And then the bottom is a move 2, attack 2. If you consume any element, you can become invisible, you gain darkness, and 1 XP. So of these two, I would actually go with Angel of Death, just because, to me, being able to jump into a group of 3 or 4 normal enemies and just instantly kill them is just too powerful. Can't pass that one up. So we'll take that one, and we'll take Empowering Void away, finally, even though we're going to lose that possibility of doubling our moves and attacks. At this point with Angel of Death, I don't really see it being that necessary. So there we go. That's level 9 with the Night Shroud. Really focused on invisibility. So we have Cloak of Shadow, or rather Cloak of Shade, which will allow us to go invisible. Prepare for the kill to get us our darkness when we need it. And then we have Grim Sustenance, which uses our invisibility to do more damage and then also makes us go invisible again. We have Black Arrow, which allows us to go invisible. We have Quiet Frenzy, which uses that darkness to give us a ton more attack and uses invisible. And then we have Lurking Ruin, which can make us go invisible, or we can use the invisible to do more damage. Angel of Death to consume darkness and just kill a bunch of enemies. So at this point, really be invisible all the time, have darkness out there, and we're going to be really, really powered up. Now, if you don't maximize creating darkness and being invisible with the Night Shroud, you'll find yourself way underpowered. So make sure you're really creating a lot of dark and being invisible as much as you can to take full advantage of the Night Shroud's abilities. So with all that said, let's go ahead and move over to the items now and talk about items that will make sense with the Night Shroud. So for head items, the only thing I'd focus on here probably would be your Eagle Eye Goggles. That way you can get that advantage. Since we didn't take the advantage card later on, we can use this to get advantage when we need it. So if we're about to do that attack 8 or an attack 10 that's doubled, then we can use these Eagle Eye Goggles to make sure we don't miss. And that's really the only thing that makes sense, because we really don't need defense with the Night Shroud, because we're going to be invisible most of the time. So the next thing is armor, and for armor, I would really just go with the Cloak of Invisibility early on. It gives us another way to go invisible for free when we really need it. So it's handy to have that if we kind of mess up the way we're playing our cards, like, oh crap, I can still go invisible. And then later on, though, you get more invisibility cards. It might make more sense to go with something else like a Blinking Cape when you get that unlocked, just for the extra move you can get out of it. But then moving on to hand items. In hand items, we're really open to using whatever makes the most sense for you personally, because I would not use a shield. That's the only thing I would really say. Don't use a shield. You're not going to need it. Hold 2 weapons. use 2 one-handed weapons. So take something like the poison dagger early on for sure to add poison to your attacks, and then, you know, when you get the jagged sword, pick that up. So now I can poison or wound or do both because I have both of these weapons. So anything that really adds a status effect or does more damage makes the most sense. 2 one-handed weapons, or you could also throw in the Wand of Darkness later on when you get it, just to have an extra way to create darkness when you really need it. And then finally, for our shoes, I would go with Boots of Striding early on, obviously to help us with our movement. And then you can upgrade those, or maybe move into Jet Boots or something like that. Or the comfortable shoes might make sense just so we can always have a move 3 if we need it later on. But the Boots of Striding and their various upgrades will probably do well enough. And then finally, moving on to our small items. Really, for small items, the biggest recommendations I would have is obviously stamina potions. I know I say that for basically every character, but you can't underestimate the power of those stamina potions and being able to get cards back. Even for classes that don't necessarily need the stamina, it's nice just to get a specific card and be able to use it twice in a row. However, for Night Shroud, he does have a stamina issue with only having 9 cards, so using these stamina potions to stay up longer before your first rest is really good. Plus, you can get your invisibility cards back, your darkness trading cards back. So definitely recommend picking up both the minor and major stamina potions when you can. And then other than that, maybe something like the Moon Earring, because you can refresh your spent items. So that'd be good to get your Poison Dagger back, your Jagged Sword, whatever you're using in your hands, to be able to reuse them again without having to rest. So that's my main recommendations for his items. Hello everybody, Future89 here. Totally forgot to put the perk section into the video. So as I was editing, I discovered that I totally missed it. So if this sounds a little bit different, that's why I'm recording on a different day. But regardless, let's talk about those perks for the Night Shroud. So the Night Shroud's first perk to pick up obviously would be the Greater Immunity here, because it allows us to ignore those negative scenario effects, as we always want to pick that one up first. Plus this does add 2+1 cards as a nice little bonus. And then we're going to go ahead and remove our -1s like normal, which we should be able to do this twice, bring us down to only 1 -1. And then we get to some unique cards here. So we're going to go ahead and probably remove the zeros just so that we roll those +1s more often. And then we're going to get into Twilight and Umbra here. Now, Twilight gives us a -1 darkness card, so it allows us another way to create darkness, but it does give us a -1. However, Umbra then replaces that -1 with a +1 that still creates darkness. So you kind of debuff yourself to buff yourself in a way. So what I would do is I would take 1 Twilight and then take 1 Umbra to improve that card, and then go back Twilight again, Umbra again. That way you're only adding 1 -1 in at a time, and then eventually you get those both to be +1s with creating darkness. And then after that, we do have an add +1 and go invisible card. So that's really good. We want to take that one because it's straight +1, and we can do that twice, and then we're into our rollers already. So I would go with probably the rolling curse card first, because those curses can really be powerful, and then probably the add targets, and then we'll go into the muddles and then the heal. And short and sweet, that's the perks for the Night Shroud. The most important thing to remember here is that outside of our normal routine, these two here, Twilight and Umbra, we want to make sure that we're taking one, then the other, one, then the other, so that we don't just add a bunch of -1 cards. We're converting those to +1s. And now back to our regularly scheduled video. And there you have it. That is the Night Shroud. Again, a really fun class to play. Definitely use that invisibility. And don't forget that invisibility can also be used in Gloomhaven, at least, to actually block access to enemies. If you stand in a doorway, the enemies can't move past you. So you can literally just lock up a whole room by standing in the doorway. And as long as the enemies can't fly or jump, they'll be stuck in that room while your allies do whatever else they need to do. So even if you're not fighting, you can just be invisible and be a roadblock to kind of cheese the game, honestly, if that's the way you want to do it. So if you liked this video, please consider liking, subscribing, all that YouTube stuff. Now, if you'd like to see more, you can continue with this video here on our Gloomhaven Guide series. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and keep on gaming.